For the past 6 years, members of the Mosquito Control Board in St. Johns County have voted to award themselves ever growing holiday bonuses. Here to tell us about it is the reporter who broke the story, Jacksonville Today reporter Noah Hertz. Good morning, Noah.
Good morning, Ann.
I guess I should correct myself. It's not the past 6 years, it's, I guess, 6 out of 7.
It's the past, yeah, 6 out of the last 7 years and possibly more than that too. It's just that record keeping is a little difficult the further back you go. So, definitely 6 out of the last 7 years.
So, how did you first learn about this?
So, I received an email. Believe it or not, I have not been keeping super close tabs on what the Mosquito Control Board is up to. Now, I can definitely tell you going forward, I will be at every one of those meetings, but I received an email from a reader and a constituent who had CC'd a bunch of people and was particularly frustrated that maybe the board should not be cutting themselves bonuses from the taxpayer funding that the board receives. And that kind of threw up some alarm bells in my head. So I went back and I watched their November meeting and caught this big long discussion where, the board members were talking about how the salaries that they can take home are capped. I believe the cap is around $4,400 by state statute. They are not allowed to take home any more money than that. But it is a holiday tradition of theirs to give bonuses to the 20, 25 or so employees that the district employs to, go out and spray mosquito insecticide, to be educators, to be researchers. They employ a lot of people. And included in those holiday bonuses were the elected members of this mosquito control board, control district board as well. So the discussion in November was actually surprisingly tame. There was really nobody who raised any red flags about this, but there was one board member who was absent from that meeting. Her name is Gleason. Last name is Gleason. And Commissioner Gleason, after hearing from the constituent who tipped me off as well that this might be untoward, reached out to their attorney, who has only been there for the last year. So this is the first holiday she's been around for, and goes, "Hey, is this allowed? Are we allowed to be cutting ourselves $1,000 bonuses?" And the attorney looks into it, comes back at their December meeting and goes, "Actually, no, you are not allowed to be doing this." Determined that this was null and void, that this is not something they even have the power to do. And so those bonuses are gone. So now we are currently waiting. She has sent out a missive to the Inspector General's office or the Attorney General's office here in Florida to determine whether the sitting board members need to return past bonuses they have received or whether they should all just kind of pretend none of this happened, move on, and get on with their lives.
And so these are not small bonuses. I mean, as you said, this year it was a proposed $1,000 per board member bonus. I believe that's what they also awarded themselves last year, but they've been creeping up over time.
Yeah, this is something that there's a one person who just finished a more than 10-year tenure on the board. Her name is Catherine Brandhorst, and Commissioner Brandhorst, while defending this decision, said that, this is something that we've been doing since the 80s. And, record keeping for that is a little difficult, but I was able to determine that for absolute certain, they were cutting themselves $100 bonuses in 2018 and 19, and then it crept up. I don't remember exactly what year, but it crept up to $250. And then we kept going up and up and up until last year and this year. Last year, they took home a $1,000 bonus. And this year, like you said, it was a proposed $1,000 bonus. So in defending this move, this is something Commissioner Brandhorst said is, well, all of our employees get cost of living increases to their salaries, but we don't, and it's unfair. Therefore, we should be able to award ourselves this money. But you can imagine that it's a little sticky when it comes to state statute when you are a elected representative using taxpayer money to give yourself money.
And the statute says your salary is capped
Yes.
and that you can't give yourself more.
And that's where, it's tricky. It's tricky when you talk about this kind of stuff because legality and the ethical nature of some of these things gets a little sticky when you're an elected representative. It kind of comes down to, who's going to call you on it. And so in a case like this, it is, well, does the money that they're giving themselves amount to a raise or a one-off bonus? And considering it is pretty seriously explicit in state statute about how much money they're allowed to take home, their attorney determined that this does look like a raise.
And so you also mentioned Commissioner Catherine Brandhorst, and she's sort of on her way out. She's been on the board for a long time, and she was the one that tried to justify these as saying their pay wasn't fair. But she also proposed a different expansion of this bonus this year. Tell us a little bit about what she was angling for.
Yeah, there was some discussion during the November meeting where she pitched, why not make these bonuses that we're taking home be merit based? She pitched something that would have looked like a $500 bonus per year that a commissioner has served on the board, which, again, seems a little yucky, a little sticky to me, given that you're an elected representative that would be encouraging you to continue to run in order to get ticking up amounts of money. Given how long she had served on the board, that would have amounted to like a $6,000-7,000 bonus somewhere in that ballpark.
Wow. And so she pitched that as merit based, but actually based on year. I mean, nothing specifically merit based about just the
Yes.
fact that you've been there a long
Yeah,
time.
just time served, just time served. And I
Time
mean,
served.
Commissioner Brandhorst has been under fire this past year as well. She had some health issues, and because of that, she missed quite a few meetings of the Mosquito Control District's board. And so it reached a point where the commissioner said, "Look, Catherine, if you miss one more meeting and you don't tell us ahead of time and give us a reason for it, we are going to write a letter to the governor and ask him to remove you from the board." She did end up missing another meeting after that last year. They did write a letter to the governor, as they say, and it didn't go anywhere. So she has now been replaced by somebody new. His name is TJ Mazzata. He will serve in her role on the board going forward. But yeah, it's definitely there's quite a bit of drama surrounding a relatively small board that, in the grand scheme of things, deals with considerably less money than the county does, the county government does, but it's still quite a bit of taxpayer money.
Yeah, and it's an obscure. I mean, it's the Anastasia Mosquito Control District. It is, as you alluded to, a fairly obscure body, but they can levy taxes, and they have in the past used that power to increase the levy. I mean, they have been involved in some other issues that have drawn some scrutiny over the years, but I think in recent years, there just really hasn't been a reporting presence there. Um, so what is what is the purpose of the board? What are they supposed to be doing? Are they unique in Florida government in the state?
So most counties in Florida, or I guess it'd be generalizing to say most counties. A lot of counties in Florida have arms of the county government that can levy separate taxes for mosquito control. I came from Volusia County. That's where I grew up. In Volusia County, the mosquito control is an arm of the county government. So when you get your property tax bill, it's all going to be on one property tax bill that the county is specifically pulling money, this amount of mills for mosquito control. Now, in that case, since it is under the county government, it's just an arm of them. They do not have a separate elected board overseeing them. So there's only a couple of boards or a couple of districts across the state that have separate elected boards overseeing their mosquito control. Now, this is something that, talking to the folks on the board, talking to like the director of the district and all the other things, this is a benefit in their case because the Anastasia Mosquito Control District has a lot more freedom to do research, to participate in, like I said, research and education and all kinds of things because they are separate from the county government. Totally different amount of bureaucracy. You don't have to get a county commission to sit there and approve every single thing that you do. They're able to do things separately. And because of that, they have their own education center they've opened that is functionally a mosquito museum. They are able to participate in all of these conferences where mosquito control researchers and educators go to every year to then bring back, as they would say, I guess, state of the art pesticides and pesticides they can help research and all these things. So the argument there would be that their independence gives them a lot more freedom to potentially do better mosquito control service for this chunk of Northeast Florida.
Do we get the sense that the commissioners themselves are traveling for this purpose?
Every now and then, for conferences and such, I would not say it's an every week kind of thing, but the commissioners that I have spoken to on the board are surprisingly excited about mosquito control. I guess you would have to be if you're serving on a board like that. But the people I've talked to are people who genuinely, at least to some degree, seem passionate about ensuring that the mosquito control in St. Johns County and the surrounding area is the best that it can be.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Noah Hertz. He is the St. Johns County reporter for Jacksonville Today. If you have questions or comments or just want to join our conversation, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at wjct.org, or you can reach out and tag us on social media. So, Noah, this board, I mean, there have been questions over the years about whether this board is truly necessary, and that has come out of following some millage rate increases, some purchases that were somewhat controversial. One of them is a helicopter that does aerial spraying and cost about $600,000 to buy. It costs about $800,000 for the helipad that they built and the hangar, and about $400,000 a year just to operate it. You've had some up close experience with this
Yes,
helicopter.
I have. I have. When I visited the Mosquito Control District's headquarters earlier this year to tour their new education center, they insisted that they give me a tour of the area, an aerial tour from the helicopter. And as a journalist, I really try not to take free things. It makes me really, really uncomfortable. But they just kept offering, and like, come on, look, the helicopter, it's already running. Why don't you just go ahead and jump in? And so I did accept a brief flyover tour in the helicopter. It was a nice helicopter, I'll tell you that. It does not surprise me that it takes that much money in order to do upkeep on that vehicle because it is quite nice. Yes.
Yeah. They have also been criticized for this education center. And you mentioned it briefly because you did a story when it opened earlier this year. It was initially estimated that it was going to cost about $3 million. That itself was not without controversy. Again, we're talking
Yeah.
about taxpayer money. That decision to build it came after a millage rate increase.
Yes.
It ended up costing, according to your reporting, $4.5 million. So somewhat over the original estimate, although we should say that COVID intervened and a lot of things happened that raised costs during that.
Exactly, exactly. And that's something that, COVID has increased the cost of everything. So if you talk to people who have been skeptical about this project from the very beginning, they will tell you, they will point at this as a reason to say, look, why did we build this to begin with? Look how much more money it has cost. Whereas if you ask the folks from the district, they will tell you just that COVID has made everything cost more money. And, in their defense too, or I guess the defense that they would make, it is the first time they'd ever done something like this. And so there were potentially places where, costs might have been higher than initially projected just because they want to build something that actually does benefit the taxpayers in the long run, actually does benefit the community in the long run, and is a nice place to bring people, to bring kids, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Initially, when it was proposed, everybody called it a mosquito museum. And
Yes.
then over time, it became known as an education center. It kind of became a little more palatable to lawmakers with that moniker. Um, but it has some elements that still raise questions, including a very large mosquito statue at the entrance.
Yes.
Um, do we know much about who's using this facility? Who it's ultimately benefiting? Um, whether and is it something that's going to be free to people who attend?
Back when I first toured it, if I remember correctly, the original proposal was it is free for now, but as they got an idea of how many people were visiting it, then they would consider charging a small fee. The idea is that it's something that will be available to kids and families and this kind of thing. I remember when I toured it, it was not even fully open yet. It was only really open on a trial basis. There were a couple exhibits that weren't 100% done, but there was at least 2 or 3 classes of homeschooled kids who were coming through, or I say classes, it was like a small group and then a couple of families who were going through it, and the kids were having a blast when I was walking through. This is kids whose parents say, "Oh my god, I never thought they'd be interested in bugs, and here's this giant life-size mosquito, well, 4-foot large mosquito on the wall, and they're really interested in it." I can't say yet exactly how many people they've had visit it in the past year. I've been waiting until it hits 1 year until it was fully open, and then I'm gonna request, what their attendance was, because that's something I'm really curious about too. You spend so much money on this. Will it pan out in the first year? Is it something that they did a good enough job promoting? Is it something that in 1 year enough people have visited, and are they projecting those numbers to increase if not?
If you're just joining us, we are talking to St. Johns County reporter for Jacksonville today, Noah Hertz. And we welcome your calls and comments. You can reach us at 904-549-2937. We've got a call from Jerry in St. Augustine. Good morning, Jerry. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Yeah, my question is, are these board members who decided to give themselves bonuses, the same people who decide on the safety of county residents, for instance, when aerial bug spraying goes on over homes, how much they use, do they use knowledge, who decides on these safety precautions? That's, I guess, my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Noah, what do we know about how involved they are in those decisions?
So I can definitely say, having watched a few of the district meetings now and read through the board minutes for a bunch more, that this is, I don't want to characterize it as a bunch of elected bureaucrats who don't really have a lot of knowledge of these pesticides, of mosquito control, just kind of throwing numbers out there and saying, how about we spray this much over Nocatee and this much over Silverleaf? They do have a large staff of researchers, of people who have worked in this field for a long time, of people who have studied this and are very up to date on what the latest science is. And those are the people who are proposing the numbers, who are suggesting how much they should spray where. And it is worth noting, too, that the majority of the spraying that happens to is not necessarily aerial. Again, not an expert in mosquito control, but my understanding is that quite a bit of the spraying that happens is much more targeted on the ground. And that's when you see the people going through in trucks. They get out, they have the hose, and they spray specific areas. The helicopters are generally really utilized most over marshy areas. After there's been a big, like after a hurricane goes through, after a marsh is flooded, that's an opportunity for a helicopter to go through and dump pesticides over a larger area where there is expected to be increased mosquito breeding. This helicopter is not necessarily going over neighborhoods and just dumping oodles of pesticides on places where it could affect people, animals, that kind of thing.
And Jerry was specifically concerned about Naled, which is a pesticide that's approved by the Environmental Protection Agency for use by, mosquito purposes like this. Do we know anything about what pesticides they're using? Um, or is there any way that residents can find out more about that?
I'll be honest, I do not know off the top of my head. That is something that I will look into and see if I can get some more information about. But I do know that if you just Google search the Anastasia Mosquito Control District and you go to their website, if you just call up and ask, they are generally very happy to answer questions, at least in my experience. I know they are used to fielding questions like this from people who don't really understand, I mean, myself included, don't really know what the ins and outs of mosquito control look like. So I have no doubt that if you called up and wanted to talk a little bit about specific pesticides and then the safety of those pesticides, that they would hopefully answer your question. And
Yeah,
if not, give us a call.
I've been trying to scan their website, and it doesn't appear to me that they say specifically
Yeah.
what kinds of pesticide they use, but it does say the dosages at which these products are legally dispensed are at least 100-fold less than the point at which public health and environmental safety merit consideration.
Yeah.
So,
And that's something that's governed by state statute and federal law too, I believe. That's not something that they are necessarily off the cuff deciding on laws and those kinds of things.
I want to take a call from Eric in Arlington. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Oh, good morning. Merry Christmas and all that. So my neighborhood is designed in such a way that stormwater runoff runs down these ditches that, because we have septic tanks that are open through our front yards, and they're supposed to run down and out. And because of poor maintenance, and also because it's just sort of designed the way in which it's designed, it collects a lot of water. And I know that standing water is a breeding ground for mosquitoes. So then I guess the city comes in and sprays a lot for mosquitoes over there. But once again, poor people like myself that live out on the northwest side out there, we're subject to public health issues that other people aren't, because we've got the way in which the drainage is arranged, we've got mosquitoes, and then the only way to combat the mosquitoes that's been created by this poorly maintained system, is to spray these pesticides everywhere. So, I know that in other parts of town where, there aren't these, where there's more money, where people have more money and they're better off, they don't have these sorts of arrangements, these ditches that are open to the air. So you care to comment on that? Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
I mean, again, that's something that I don't feel comfortable commenting on the specifics of pesticides used, the amounts used, but historically, Eric is correct. I mean, it is areas with poorer people, with people who are lower on the socioeconomic ladder, who in the long run, in 30 years when a story comes out about a pesticide that was used that might not have been as safe as the government or an agency thought it was initially, end up feeling the brunt of those health issues. So I'm certainly hopeful that nothing like that happens in this area, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on going forward here.
So, Noah, one of the things that you focus on as a reporter at Jacksonville Today is St. Johns County, and you were really specifically brought aboard to focus on St. Johns County. It is one of the fastest growing counties in the country. It is um, bereft of much in the way of reporting. There are a few reporters in town that do focus on St. Johns County. I can think of Stuart Corfidge and Jessica Clark, but it is an enormous place to cover, and it's hard for any one or two people to cover all of these boards, especially obscure ones.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I always joke with people that, if you were to watch every single government meeting that was happening in St. Johns County, in St. Augustine, and in the surrounding area there, if you were to keep tabs on every single government meeting that was happening every day, that would be your entire life. You would go from auditorium to auditorium, board meeting to board meeting, watching historic preservation boards and planning and zoning agencies and veterans councils and mosquito control boards. So it is definitely a task to find what you have to pick and choose, to prioritize, to follow, knowing where, there might be something controversial that comes out of this. But like you said, it's tricky because it is an area that is really just itching for people to pay attention and people to hold powerful people to account, hold there's, a big issue is development in the county, to hold developers to account, because I hear from a lot of people who are upset that there is not as much news coverage in St. Johns County as they wish there was. The St. Augustine Record does not have near as many staff members as it used to. The TV stations that have reporters covering the St. Johns County area also have to cover the Jacksonville area. And so it is tricky, but I can say, it's been almost a year since I joined the Jacksonville Today team. It has truly been a joy to try and wrap my arms around this area and figure out what needs to be covered. Every time I talk to somebody, I end almost every conversation with, "What do you think we should pay attention to?" Because I don't want to claim to be an authority. I grew up near St. Augustine, but I wasn't there like watching the local news every night when I was a 9-year-old. So it's something that I'm really enjoying covering, but it's also something that, like my inbox is always open. I am always looking for potential leads, because I would be lying if I told you that I was able to keep tabs on every single little thing that really deserves in-depth coverage in St. Johns County.
I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, if people listening have something that they want you to dig into or a story idea that they want to pitch your way, what is the best way for them to make contact with you?
If you go to jaxtoday.org and pull up our masthead, find all the folks who work there, you can find my little face, my little picture, and you click on it, and it's got an email address right there. It is noah@jaxtoday.org. We all follow the same email format of first name at jaxtoday.org. I'm pretty easy to reach. I respond to my email as quickly as I can. And, if you see me at a government meeting, at a St. Augustine City Commission meeting, I'm usually the only guy in the audience with a computer, like ferociously taking notes on my computer. And I get a lot of weird looks sometimes, like, why is this guy tapping his keyboard so fast in the middle of this meeting? But yeah, I'm always happy to talk to people who have things that they have been following that they just don't have the time to really dig into.
Yeah. Well, Noah Hertz, you're doing great reporting in St. Johns County. Thanks for the report on the Anastasia Mosquito Control District. You can find his stories at Jacksonville Today. He's done a number of them on that board, but thank you for all your other reporting in St. Johns County.
Thank you very much, Ann.